Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
No. Good afternoon and good morning to everybody across the country. I can't hear Sheila, I can't hear Justin, but now I can, I think. Sheila, how are you doing? Welcome everybody to the Rebel News live stream, where we are going to get the latest stories, of course, about rebelnews.com and the debate commission, Sheila, and of course all the stories around the world and the biggest stories from our website. We're going to take your hyper chats from Odyssey, your Rumble rants from Rumble, and we're going to kick ourselves off of YouTube very soon because we know how much they mistreat us. Sheila, thanks for joining me. Anything to say off the top about the big news?
I'm about as smug as I can be. Like, I'm so smug I can't stand myself. I've kicked my slippers off. I've got my running shoes. We're going to do a victory lap around everybody involved, the Conservatives included. Corey Hahn, I'm looking at you. We've got some news about him later on also. Yeah, like, this is Rebel News to the Debates Commission and Justin Trudeau, 0. And before we get started, shout out to Chad Williamson. Gave up his long weekend. We enlisted him, like, I think late Thursday, maybe it was even Friday, that we said, hey, we're going to court to fight the Debates Commission. We want to do it in federal court, and you're the guy to do it. He set aside his entire weekend, and he was able to beat 7 of Justin Trudeau's best lawyers. Our guy did that. And for those of you who have been following along with FightTheFines.com, that top-notch lawyer is one of our Fight the Fines lawyers. So just so everybody understands the caliber of lawyer that they're getting if they end up in the Fight the Fines system and they need some help fighting a lockdown ticket, you're going to get a guy who beat Justin Trudeau's 7 high-priced lawyers that the boss estimates cost $1.5 million to fight us in court.
Yeah, and it's crazy, not only the short notice, but how he was able to defeat all these lawyers. A lot of people actually tuned into it. I think the max was, what, 2,000 people for I call it a live stream, but the Zoom court process that was going on, their proceeding, I'll call it. And we got tons of emails of from people saying that they were watching it, that they thought we were going to win. Of course, you don't want to, what's the saying, count your chickens before they hatch or something. Sheila, you should know that phrase. You live on a farm.
Yeah, I was going to say you don't want to call the shutout, right? But it was funny to watch Ezra go from generally pessimistic with court, as he tends to be, to moderately optimistic, thinking it wasn't a catastrophe, to like, hey, we just might win this, and let's book everybody a ticket to Ottawa late yesterday evening. And as it turns out, he was right to feel that way. Because our crowd-funded lawyer at letusreport.com, if people want to pitch in to cover the legal costs to offset the fees of Chad Williamson to beat 7 of Justin Trudeau's lawyers, paid for by you, to fight us in court for journalistic freedom. But yeah, it was funny to watch, like, 3 hours, Ezra was slowly changing in his mood until, like, our evening staff call was like, okay, everybody, we're going to Ottawa, we're going to win this. And as it turns out, he was right to feel that way. Yeah,
and I'm excited because I'm excited to share the documents that the government shared with us as to the reasons why they wanted to keep us out. They sort of created, some anti-Rebel News rules. They clearly spent a lot of time sifting through our text and our videos to find reasons. Just quickly, one of the examples they used for me was a video where I was just reporting that there were the mask mandates, that they had exemptions. That was literally all the video was about. It was me saying that these businesses can't say that there are no exemptions to the mask mandates. And all of this stuff that they listed for all of the people that, all of our reporters that applied to go to the debates, they sort of list the videos and the reasons why it would be impartial of us to ask questions to Aaron O'Toole, and specifically, I don't know what everybody else has said, but mine said this. My opinions disqualify me from asking fair questions to Aaron O'Toole specifically. So they're kind of trying to use the strategy, well, we don't want you to be unfair to the Conservative leader. That's why we don't want you here. But if you're in the parliamentary press gallery, you can have any opinion you want. You can do anything you want. So it was literally a rule against Rebel News. And Sheila, now that they've been defeated twice, once before I worked here, and now this time, I'm almost immediately thinking, what will be the excuse in 4 years from now? Excuse me, or whenever the next election is. Because is this enough of a precedent set where they can't do this again? Or will they just come up with a new rule? So I'm interested to see that angle. But most of all, I'm interested to see what happens tonight. Who they call on, whether it's virtually or in person. And I don't think we're going to give any, I don't know how much information we want to give, Sheila.
I'm not sure, but what I do know about my colleagues who are allowed to go in, we've got hustle. We work harder than the mainstream media journalists, and we will outwork them. Those of us who may or may not be inside the venue tonight, we will outwork them. We will get to that mic sooner than them, and they will be frustrated because we outwork them. And it will feel strange and foreign to them to see a journalist working for their salary. It's going to catch them off guard. They're going to be very disoriented by it all, but it's going to happen to them. And, I think it's really interesting, too, that none of the journalistic defenders, the official civil liberties groups, none of them really weighed in on this when they won't shut up when they're jangling around for donations from journalists like me, or they want people to join their thing to support whatever they do. And I'm not really sure what they do except hold parties for themselves. Seriously, that's all I think that PEN Canada does. But anyways, none of them weighed in on behalf of us. Not the Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, not the Canadian Association of Journalists, not the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, Press Freedom, Amnesty, PEN Canada, cone of silence around these guys. And they tell me they defend the rights of journalists. They've never come to my aid when I've been punched or banned or anything like that. But it's just us. And I think we are, at this point, given all of our work and all of the things that we do, not only Canada's largest civil liberties organization, but Canada's most effective civil liberties organization based on our work through FightTheFines.com, Fight Vaccine Passports, and now taking on Justin Trudeau's Debates Commission and winning in federal court twice. So we've rendered all these journalistic organizations completely obsolete. Not that they would have helped us anyway.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of just like they're forming all these clubs and they want to keep as many people out as they can because it's a safety net, it's a safe space for them, Sheila. When I look at one of the videos we have coming up with Alexa and the communications director for the Conservative Party, it's like you're so afraid to let go of this stranglehold and this control where you can control all the information going in and coming out, all the questions, and we're going to see him, Sheila. He's not a very man of stature, a very manly man. Pardon me?
I can't wait. If I'm not inside the venue, then he's going to hear my smug, shrill little voice asking Aaron O'Toole a question over the phone because he has tried to keep us out. He's called us disruptive. We're not. The Conservative Party could have been the party of civil liberties, except they are on this one issue indistinguishable, not just this one issue, on many issues, indistinguishable from the Liberals. And so, we're this little organization. We had to go to court to get access to the venue, and they would have done the exact same thing to us. And I think that to answer your question from earlier about would we see this in 4 years? Well, I think we will, because it doesn't matter who's in charge, because the Liberals are doing this and the Conservatives have done this on the campaign trail. So is this going to be any different no matter who's in charge? No. Whether it's 2 years or 4 years, we're going to have this fight ahead of us anyway.
It's really weird to sit there and watch him and the Conservative Party come up with the same answers over and over again. They can't speak like humans. They still want to play this old political game. I'll call it a pre-Trump version of politics, where we don't have to give real answers. Nobody's going to know what we're saying as long as, we give the pre-approved answer. Everything's fine. No one's going to question it. Everybody's just going to take us at our word for Rebel News is being disruptive. We can't say when or how, but just take us at our word. We're the establishment conservative guys. So please, I want you guys to Rumble, Rant, and Odyssey hyper chat us what suggestions you have for us to ask, because we'll be able to ask questions in person and I think online or over the phone, Sheila. And if you go to our website, you can see the ruling. I believe producer Justin is up there, and you can see what they've allowed us to do. So I'm going to be thinking of a question. I know I've been thinking of a question just in case. I'm going to think of more questions, and I'm sure we will take some good ideas from the viewers, because without them we wouldn't be here. One of the things they tried to say to us is, of course, this doesn't apply to the press gallery people, but one of the things they tried to say to us is crowdfunding is a reason why we can't ask impartial questions. I don't know how that works. I guess we should take money from the government instead, or from, the NIH or somebody Dr. Fauci gives money to, or gets money from. But it's a weird set of rules they tried to do and put in place. They
literally said, to say that we're crowdfunded, that actually makes us independent, right? Like, we're beholden to no one. We're beholden to small donations from a diverse group of people who donate on any number of issues. That actually ensures our independence, as opposed to the bailout media in the parliamentary press gallery, who can't attack their paymaster, Justin Trudeau, because if he loses, the potential is that they will be cut off from their funding, although I'm not confident the Conservatives would roll any of that back.
No, and they still, even the Conservatives have unnamed publications carrying water for them, Canadian news companies, and they want to be part of the club too, and it's all sad, and they all think they're so cool, Sheila, and I'm here to tell them that they're not cool, because it's fun for them to bully people and keep them out. We see it from the Conservative and the Liberal communications boys that look like they're 17 years old. But turns out at the end of the day, Sheila, you can't just keep people out for no reason when they want to ask reasonable questions with a large audience behind them like we do. Do you want to say goodbye to YouTube right now, and then we'll get into more stuff?
I think we should hang on to YouTube as long as possible, just for spite, until we until I'm so full of smug and spite today. It's ridiculous. It's okay. Until we touch on some of those things that YouTube doesn't want us to talk about, like medicines,
we can get to the
experimental medicines and things like that.
Fauci, NIH later on. I think we should cover some of the debate topics that are happening tonight and let people know the topics so they can suggest questions to us. Affordability is the first one we have on this list, and the first thing that comes to mind is the taxes and carbon tax, which the O'Toole government's pretending is not a carbon tax. It's a carbon levy. Really, we're just taking your money and then letting you spend it on things that we pre-approve of. What's your thoughts about that, Sheila? What kind of arguments have you heard defending that?
Well, like they say, it's the same argument that the Liberals make, right? Like, if they confiscate your money, cycle it through the hands of 100 bureaucrats, and then give a pittance of it back to you, that's them keeping more of your own money in your own pocket, as they like to say. And, you're going to hear the Conservatives say, well, our choice allows you to spend your money on the things that you care about that, will, I don't know, retrofit your house for whatever the heck. Like you need the government to tell you to be more efficient with your energy choices. But, I think this discussion, it's going to be interesting to see how the questions are crafted, because the Liberals are failing on every single affordability issue out there. If you are talking about home ownership and home affordability, they literally have a guy that flips houses running for the MP. And they're like, oh, we have to make rules to stop house flipping. but they're running a guy, I think, who flipped 9 or 11 houses over a very short period of time. That sort of thing inflates the cost of housing and prices young people like you out of the market. They've tacked on carbon taxes. They've decided to tax those rich farmers like me a little extra. And, you know, it's stuff like that where the Liberals are failing. But I'm interested to see how the Debates Commission crafts the questions to protect Justin Trudeau from being forced to answer questions on those things. It's like Justin Trudeau exists in a world where you don't have to buy real things, so he doesn't really know how all that sort of stuff trickles down to the regular household.
Well, I'm expecting most of their answers to be the same, not just Justin Trudeau to be protected from it, but I think anything that Aaron O'Toole slightly differs from Jagmeet, Blanchet, and Trudeau on, he will easily be able to tiptoe around that. Like if it's something like, is this a racist country, Jagmeet? And he says, yes, of course. And Justin Trudeau says, this is an anti-woman country. We have a she session by the she shore. I think Aaron O'Toole will just say, you know, we have problems in this country that we need to address and make a country equal for all people. So he won't disagree with them. He'll just find a way to tiptoe around it like he's done. And then eventually he'll just rescind back into the same viewpoints we've seen from him, which have been, I'm too afraid. It took me one day to go against my gun ban removal. It took him how long to go back on his China plans. It took him how long to go back on his plans to defund the CBC. All these things that are, you know, progressive in the sense that they haven't been done before or that they're supposed to be coming from a conservative point of view. He backs off of immediately as soon as 13 people on Twitter challenge him, or the NDP, you know, holds a rally of 20 people for 2 days. It's very weak, and to your point, I don't expect the questions to not only favor Justin Trudeau and for him to get out of them, I expect that they're also similar. Maybe Jagmeet further left than the rest of them, but I suspect that they're also similar, that their answers wouldn't be too different anyway, Sheila. Climate plans, of course, is another thing with the carbon tax. Canada obviously is pretty good at reducing emissions. It's the Paris Climate Accord, I think, that gets lumped into that I disagree with. It's basically funneling money to places like China who don't have to adhere to the rules. It's a way, I think, for the United States to pay down their debt to China when they want to. It's a very Obama thing and now a Joe Biden thing. Do you think that there is room in a platform, let's say Sheila is Prime Minister or whomever Sheila wants to be running the country as Prime Minister, how topical is the climate plan in your sense here? How important is it to you?
I think, and studies have consistently shown this, that people are really not interested in climate issues if you just leave them alone and not ram it down their throat. Mm-hmm. I think people feel like they're supposed to care about climate change because the TV won't shut up about how much you're supposed to care about the climate change, and about, you know, like teenagers are yelling at you on TV about climate change. And if I want a teenager to yell at me, I've got one over there. She can yell at me. Just, like at least I'm related to that one.
That's a new show.
I think teenagers yelling at Sheila. But, you know, I think people genuinely don't care about this sort of stuff. Like, I had my actual list of things that I wanted to hear about versus the topics for tonight. So, for example, the debate topics tonight are affordability, climate, COVID recovery, leadership and accountability. That might be interesting to see the Liberals try to skirt that one, Mr. 1, 2, 3 ethics stuff. But yeah, here's mine. Thanks for digging that up, Justin. And they have reconciliation, which I think is interesting because we're burning down Indigenous churches in this country, but okay. My issues were foreign policy, like how are we going to deal with China, who still has 2 Canadian hostages? Afghanistan is in full meltdown. We've abandoned Canadian allies there. Fiscal issues. They're talking about COVID recovery. I want to talk about COVID debt and like the damage done to the small business sector done by the COVID shutdown, not by COVID itself. Violent crime rates. So everything the Liberals have done to address what they say is causing violent crime, so duck hunters, I guess, violent crime has gone up 20% in some places of this country under Justin Trudeau, while it was on a steady decline for years before Justin Trudeau took power. And so nobody's talking about, and to use the liberal language, root causes of that. And that I would suggest that has a lot to do with our porous border and guns being trafficked across the border. So not only is an open border an immigration problem, but it's also a violent crime problem unfolding right in front of us. And you know, it's interesting that the public safety minister who oversaw the explosion of violent crime in Toronto is also the guy now overseeing the explosion of violent crime across the country and is also in charge of the border. But anyway, and national unity issues. I don't think this country could be more divided. And I'm not even just talking about the fact that as Westerners, we just want a piece out of here. But I think this country is, neighbors are fighting with neighbors over things that never used to be a political issue. And then, of course, free speech and civil liberties, because I think over this last 18 months, this has been the greatest infringement of civil liberties in at least our lifetimes. And nobody is even talking about it. It's not even a debate topic. It's not even a campaign topic, if you'll notice.
I would combine the COVID recovery and accountability in the sense that who's going to be accountable for the businesses that they shut down and the loss to the economy there. Who's going to be accountable? Like, for example, Doug Ford, and I know this is a federal election, but Doug Ford spent taxpayer dollars on building 2 field hospitals. Are we going to get that money back because they weren't used at all? Are we going to get the money back we used to hire nurses only to then turn around and fire them when they didn't agree with the government stance on something? I would like to see more of that, more accountability if they're actually worried about it, more questions about how are we going to get back the money we've spent very frivolously. I mean, Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford worked on that electric car plant. If our electric car plants are going forward and we're doing all these things to lower our emissions, why do we need a carbon levy, Aaron O'Toole? Why do we need a higher carbon tax that gradually goes up? If we can't be doing both at the same time. We can't be punishing us for creating too much carbon emissions, but at the same time also using our money to lessen our carbon emissions. You can't take my money from both sides of both of my pockets and tell me that I'm still doing a bad job, because the simple facts are that we aren't. Reconciliation.
Well, and sorry, before you go on from climate change, I'm kind of glad that this is in there, but I take a different viewpoint in it, in that if you see what happened in the United States, okay, first of all, I actually did a story about this, and it's just sort of sitting there waiting to come out. Carbon emissions fell under Stephen Harper. When Stephen Harper took charge, carbon emissions were lower when he left. Now, under Justin Trudeau, they've gone consistently upward. The same thing happened in the United States. After an initial spike, after President Trump took office, they began to fall under President Trump. And a lot of that is unlocking new ways of extracting fossil fuels. Instead of blocking pipelines and importing higher greenhouse gas fossil fuels, if you care about those sorts of things. I'm not sure I do. I just want to use Canadian first. But if you care about greenhouse gas emissions, then fracking is the way of the future. That decline in greenhouse gas emissions in the United States was the adoption of fracked natural gas for electricity purposes. And yet, across this country, we see jurisdictions buying into Russian propaganda about fracking and how it's dangerous, when if it were dangerous, every water well in Alberta would be contaminated. It's just not the case. We've been doing it here for decades and decades and decades safely, and yet jurisdictions all across Canada, including and political parties like the NDP and the Greens, and to some extent a certain faction of the Liberals, they're completely against fracking. And a lot of that is actual Russian meddling. Like Gazprom, the major Russian gas company, was like, a UN report said that they were funding activists in the United States to sow the seeds of discontent against fracking, and it's working. But that's the Russian meddling nobody wants to talk about. Sorry for my climate change rant there, but that's a thing. That's fine. You can go back in history and watch videos from people who talk about the propaganda that is used against fossil fuels, as they call it. By the way, there's never been a fossil found when they're digging up oil reserves.
And people see a movie and they think it's the end all be all, and this sort of thing happens all the time. Now, I'm no expert in it, but it's sort of like the whole COVID thing. We're convicting things before they even actually happen, and I have a big problem with that. I have a big problem with artificially pushing people towards different energies. Now, the solar energy is well on its way to getting there. Electric cars are on the market, so it's not being stopped as much as people want to pretend. But I find it, and if you read something like the Green New Deal in the United States, which I think Jagmeet Singh particularly would love to have in Canada. He said, I believe, that we need one here. If you look at that, it's not about saving the environment. It's not about, you know, making the world a better place. It's about replacing my oil billionaire or your oil billionaires with my green energy billionaires. It's about putting Al Gore at the head instead of, I don't know, name the Bush family, because I can't think of any other oil people. So when they talk about this sort of stuff, it's not just because they want to save the environment. They want to pay people to retrofit all the government buildings in the United States. They want to pay a different set of people to, you know, convert these factories into electric car factories, so even though the disposal of these batteries and the charging of these batteries cause a lot more emissions. So it's not about actually saving the environment. So many of these arguments are not, you know, Black Lives Matter. You must care about Black lives. It's a superficial title and argument on the surface so that you think that it's for a good reason and for a good cause, but when you actually read the document, it's all about just like, well, my preferred billionaires need to get the money, and your billionaires are evil and they have bad intentions. None of it ever turns out to be just a good person wanting to do a good thing, and that goes right down to Elon Musk. He stands up there and he gives these speeches where he pretends like he does nothing wrong and he's just a guy who cares about everybody. And I don't dislike him for that. I think he's willing to manipulate the market and play the game. And this is the same thing we see with people like Greta, who come to Canada and act as if this was her whole idea. It came from nothing. She just wanted to help the environment, when her whole spiel actually came from a public relations person who found her sitting in the street in Sweden and made a marketing campaign about it, and her parents profited off her by writing books and stuff, etc. We all know the story, Greta and her beans, Sheila. So what I'm getting at here is, if people want to vote for that sort of topic and that sort of viewpoint, that we need to be stricter on climate change and have more environmental concerns, start with actually going and reading the literature about it. Start with going to the history and the documents, because when Justin Trudeau puts in a carbon tax for businesses like he did last election, sure, you might say, oh, this is good for the environment and it's going to cause less emissions. But when you read it, it doesn't actually make any sense. Tax a business, and if they can't get up to speed, then you give them the money back and say, buy a new fridge with it. What about just not taking away their money? So it's frustrating when you read government. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and sorry to interrupt you, but the proof is in the pudding. Like, if this stuff is meant to bring down greenhouse gas emissions, then all these carbon taxes should bring down greenhouse gas emissions. They're just not. They're just making people poorer, because nobody is actually all that inefficient. You don't go and just idle your vehicle just because you can. Gas and diesel costs money. You don't leave every light in the house on because it costs money. People are already efficient because they have to pay for these sorts of things. So to add an extra tax on top of that only takes money out of people's pockets. It doesn't mean that they don't flip on the light anymore. They're already not doing that. It just makes people more poor. I have to drive a certain distance to buy a jug of milk. That doesn't change. A carbon tax does not physically move my farm closer to town. It doesn't change. It just takes more money out of my pocket. It makes that jug of milk more expensive in the store, and it makes my trip to town just that much more expensive. And like I said, the proof is in the pudding. Carbon emissions are going up under Justin Trudeau. So what are those taxes about except a wealth transfer? And that's all it's ever been.
Fundamentally, a couple of years ago, you would have to believe that Catherine McKenna is better at spending your money to reduce emissions than you are at, turning off your lights, not idling your car, that sort of thing. And if you want to trust her with anything, I say go ahead. But you might only want to trust her with something like, doing an impression of a girl from the Valley or something like that. Well, Sheila, my carbon tax is working. Justin.
I wouldn't even let that woman wear my snowshoes to work or whatever she did in that photo op where she snowshoed down the sidewalk to work. I wouldn't even let her borrow my snowshoes.
Producer Justin, I don't see the chats in our chat.
I got them. I got them
wow,
there in,
Justin.
he sent them to me. They're in WhatsApp directly just to Sheila. So we've got a Rumble rant from BB. It's okay. BB Con. It's $1. I haven't donated during these shows for a while, been donating on the site. Well, thank you so much. So happy with the news, your friend Bruce. Well, thanks, Bruce. And we appreciate you donating on the site. Every little bit helps, even though the Debates Commission says that being crowdfunded precludes us from attending these debates.
Evil.
And, you know, it's evil. And actually, it came up in court yesterday when I was listening. And it's kind of funny to hear your name in federal court and you're like not in trouble, but you're kind of in trouble, where they were mad because I'm fundraising a charter challenge to the lockdown. And they said because I care about civil liberties enough to help people fight the lockdown, that I shouldn't be able to attend the debates and ask questions about things I care about, like civil liberties. They said since our reporter at the time, Cian Bexty, was stuffed into the sausage maker of the COVID jail system, and we, you know, brought a legal challenge with regard to that we couldn't be at the debates because we actually defended the civil liberties of our journalists. But the fact that CBC brought a lawsuit on behalf of 2 of their journalists against the Conservative Party of Canada, I guess that was just fine.
That's fine. Another example I have, and I'll make a video about this in the next few days, I think, but one of the problems they had, or one of the examples they used, was that I did a video with a college basketball player who was lied to by Health Canada about whether or not he had to quarantine. That really disqualified me from being fair to our leaders of the country. Unbelievable.
How dare you? How dare you?
I know. Greta, always pops up in our minds.
We've got a Rumble rant from BB Con who gives us another $4. I meant a $5 donation. Well, thanks so much, and shout out to Justin.
Uh-oh. Wow, baseball season, everybody.
Yeah. It's hardly a sport, but okay.
Unbelievable.
We got a Rumble rant from AMT60. It's $1. It says, great news for Rebel win. I hope that Rebel gets to ask questions and that you ask Trudeau prickly questions, including Conservative Party of Canada flip-floppers. You know what, Justin, I know you, there's a lot of chats here. I know you want us to get to these, and I think we should, but I see this next question that's coming up in the comments here is about things we're not allowed to talk about on YouTube. So maybe if we could throw to Alexa's video and my friend Corey Hahn of the Conservative Party of Canada, and then we'll get to these other questions that will take us into like red zone territory. Could we do that?
It's a football reference, red zone.
With the tightening of measures around vaccination, with the threat of dismissal of several workers for not wanting the vaccine, I had to go back to Mr. O'Toole to find out if his position on the vaccination passport had changed. If he believed people should be fired of their job if they don't want the vaccine, which protection would he put in place for people who have medical and religious exemption? Currently in Canada, around 17% of the population, 12 years and more, have not took the vaccine yet. This is a serious concern for not only unvaccinated, but for vaccinated people, because that will affect their job system. Losing that much employee can be terrible for businesses. Let's see if I will be able first to access to the event for a supporter, and if it will grant me the right to speak like last time. Look at it.
C'est média.
Bonjour.
Média?
Merci.
Quel média?
Rebel News.
Global News.
Je vous dire.
Your Global News?
Rebel News. Rebel News. Qu'est-ce que tu fais?
Your place for media is down there.
Parfait. Merci. Oh mon Dieu, c'est plus gros que je pensais.
They're going to be in here today. We got to go.
Why?
Because I've told you last event we were at, you're not welcome.
But I actually asked you why.
Yep, and I said you're not
But
welcome.
why?
You always disrupt our events. You're not
No,
welcome.
but because the other day I speak to a Renault tool. I didn't disturb any event.
Your
and
outlet
you know,
continually
it was
disrupts our
really
event.
nice with me.
Your outlet continually upsets our
But
events.
last event I went there, and you were there, and did I disrupt your event?
Your outlet continually disrupts
No.
our events.
Did I disrupt your
Your
event?
outlet continually disrupts our events.
Did
You're not going to
I
be here today.
disrupt your event?
We can either leave now, or we can ask someone to help you out.
I just want to know a written answer from you. Did I disrupt your event
Your
the other
outlet
day?
continually disrupts our events.
No, that's
You're
not
not
the
welcome.
answer. That's not
That
the
is an
answer.
answer. You may not like the answer, but that is an answer.
So what? You were there when at the
I was
737
at
flight?
Quebec City, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
I was there. Did you notice me?
I did not see you there, and if I had, I would have told you what I'm
Yeah.
telling you now,
And
which is you're not welcome.
I spoke with a Renault tool. Did I disrupt this event?
You disrupt the events.
Did
You're not
I
invited to this
disrupt
event.
this event
You are
last
going-
time?
So I'm asking you to leave. Are you
So
not going to leave?
why you say that I'm disrupting
Your
event?
outlet continually disrupts our events. Continually.
I say me last time. Did I?
Your outlet continually disrupts our
I
events.
want
I'm not
you
gonna
to
be
agree
arguing.
that I didn't.
I'm not going to be arguing. You may not like the answers I'm giving. These are the answers you're
Why
getting.
you're not
So-
able to say that agreeing with the fact that I didn't disrupt
You weren't-
the event of
You're
the
not supposed to
supporter.
be at any of our events. So we're gonna go. Are you gonna come with me, or do I have to get someone to help us out?
I'm not like a criminal. I'm
not-
not
no
like a
one's calling
person
you
who
a criminal.
disrupt. You disrupt your own
No
event.
one's calling
You
you a
came
criminal.
here
Let's-
to disturb me. I will stay here. I'm actually will stay here.
The sidewalk. You're welcome to the sidewalk.
Yeah, but I want you to say
There is-
that is not
there is
true
no-
what you're saying.
No.
We are not disrupting
We're
any
outside here.
event.
We're outside here. Let's go.
Yeah, but I want you to say that you
That's nice.
didn't
You
see me
want me to
last
say
time.
many things. I'm not under
For
no
me,
obligation to say anything to you.
I'm not a disrupting person.
You're
I never
disrupting right
disrupt.
now.
No, you came to me.
Yes.
You
because I
disrupt
told
your
you
own
in Quebec
event.
City, you're not welcome at our events.
No, because I was not disrupting anything. I was there. I was just
So
assisting
the
to the
conversation
support
is over.
supporter
You're
event.
welcome to stay to the sidewalk, but you're not coming in here.
So as you can see, a Renault tool just jumped on this bus after the supporter event. He actually didn't stop for answering my question, and I was actually expulsed from the event really aggressively by Koreans. That is his media communication relation. And he came to me, he disrupted his own event to say to me that I was not welcome, and he said that he would call security if I was not going to leave. But look at what I answered to him. Vous voulez toujours pas me répondre? Vous voulez toujours pas me donner
gotta get on the bus.
I
Have a
want
good day,
an
guys.
answer from you.
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, but you refuse to answer. You're a coward. It's a coward. That's it. It's the only thing that I have to say. People are not able to say more than you're not the welcome, and you keep disrupting our event. I find that it's the only thing that you have to say to me, especially because I say, did I disrupt your event? And you keep continuing that my outlet disrupt event, and not even me. So he know I never disrupt his event, but he's not able to agree with me. This is a coward. Est-ce que vous vous souvenez de moi? Vous voulez pas me parler? Je voulais juste m'intéresser à savoir pourquoi vous aviez refusé la dernière fois de me répondre. Parce qu'en fait, c'est pas une politique de ne pas répondre à la bonne news. Donc, je voulais juste savoir si vous aviez quelque chose à dire sur ça. Oh, vous avez rien à dire? Bon, ça démontre bien votre parti. That was, again, Gérard Deltel. And you know what? It was not very scary of me. I was really close to him without wearing a mask.
I'm not sure what the baseball reference there was. Oh, she knocked it out of the park. Thank you, Justin. Sheila, she's so disruptive that he didn't even notice that she was at the last event. There's so many things here to say to tough guy Corey Hahn, whom I'm pretty sure your teenage daughter could beat up. She could wrestle him. What is the difference here between O'Toole's Conservatives and Trudeau's Liberals that we saw Drea and Matt, the best duo in the country, out there getting blocked by their communications person at the door, can't answer any questions, can't give a real answer. Then you've got Alexa here, whom I think her English gets better the more irritated she gets by somebody. And he's just standing there. You continuously disrupt our events. You're not welcome here. Like, you can't be a man, Corey Hahn. You can't answer a simple question. Imagine living in fear like this, Sheila, that if you give Rebel News a real answer to a question, that you're going to be in trouble from the fellow nerds of the Conservative Party.
Well, that's the thing. I actually wrote down the words militant nerds as he was talking, because that's what happens when you give nerds who were bullied their entire lives some unearned power. You get Corey Hahn, this little censorious thug. You know, that's why I'm so happy to see Alexa going to the debate tonight. She's going to ask our questions. You want to know why? Because the Liberals don't want to see her. And again, I'm so full of spite and smug. I'm so happy that she's going to skip in there, wave hi to Corey Hahn, and then ask his guy a question. The question that Corey Hahn wouldn't let her ask the whole time. Like, he's telling her she's being disruptive. He didn't even notice, as you point out, that she was at the last event. There would have been no scene except for this militant nerd coming up and asking her to leave and then getting mad because she's not accepting her civil liberties being squashed quietly enough. This is why I said earlier that it does not matter who wins the debate. It doesn't even matter who wins the election. We are going to be in a battle with the Conservative Party of Canada for access to debates, for media access to press events, official government press events going forward, because they are behaving just the same as the Liberals. And the Liberals, actually, their communications people don't get quite as aggressive as the Conservatives do. We can actually get a little closer to Justin Trudeau than we can get to Erin O'Toole. And I think it speaks to the fact that the Conservatives know that our questions cannot be written off as though they are in bad faith. For example, CBC can ask a prickly question and the Conservatives can say, oh, that's just CBC, they're biased. They hate Conservatives. Well, it's a little tougher to say that when it's a Conservative outlet asking you that question that Conservatives want answers to.
Jagmeet Singh will give a walk and talk 3 questions, I think it was, to one of our reporters. But the Conservative Party and Mr. Hahn here is so afraid that he's willing to, stand there and just repeat the same line over and over again because what? Alexa's going to ask Erin O'Toole if vaccine mandates are going to be permanent or vaccine passports are going to be permanent. This is what they're afraid of, Sheila. These are the questions they're afraid of. All the things that he's gone back on, repealing the gun bans, freedom of speech, all the lockdowns, all these things that they're too afraid to do. Now, maybe I would ask a question if he's afraid of everyone being biphobic, like he said. But in less than 9 months, Sheila Gunn Reid, the Conservative Party has collapsed so far in on itself that it can no longer take questions from people who Other people would say are on the same side of them because they're too afraid to give the answers because of how similar they sound to Justin Trudeau and his Liberal Party. Find me one policy that they're saying that's different right now. I can't think of one. They've gone back on everything. I'm trying right now to think of a different policy.
I don't know. I've heard Pierre Poilievre talk about inflation, but then they sort of shut him up last week, and we haven't heard from him since. Corey Hahn himself, on the night of the last election loss for the Conservative Party, he checked me in to the Conservative HQ event. Was I disruptive that night, or did I sit quietly, do my work because I'm a trained professional? I'm not trained. I'm just a professional. Everything I know is self-taught. But my whole wall in my office here is full of Conservative Party media badges from where I've been checked into events, did my job, asked a question if I was able to, and then left. We are not disruptive. Alexa's not disruptive. The only time that anybody even notices she's around is when militant nerd Corey Hahn comes over and shuffles her out the door. And for Conservatives, think about this for a second. And look, I'm nonpartisan Conservative. Nobody has worked harder to get rid of the NDP in this province than me. I work every day to hold Justin Trudeau to account. I'm not advocating for any single politician. I advocate for good ideas. And I'm not supportive of your guy, whoever your guy is, just so everybody knows. But swap out Gerald Butts for Corey Hahn here. If Aaron O'Toole wins, you're going to swap Gerald Butts for Corey Hahn. And if you think that the Conservative Party of Canada, with a guy like Corey Hahn running communications, which is, he's literally not communicating. His job as a communications director is to prevent communications from happening. And any communication he gives is terrible because he can't even answer a simple question. He can't even say, well, it's because the boss told me. At least you could feel sorry for him that he has to say those sorts of things. But do you think the Conservative Party of Canada is going to fight Justin Trudeau's censorship if this is how they handle independent media?
That's what I want to touch on too, Sheila. Are these the types of men and women you want running your country? A man, at this point, Joe Biden could stand up to people more than Aaron O'Toole can. He may not know where he is at the time, but he's going to have more attitude back with a reporter who's disagreeing with him. At the same time, Joe Biden and their press secretary, they take questions from Fox News. They take questions from One America News. They're covered by Newsmax people coming up and asking them questions. In America, you can't just say, no, I'm not talking to this outlet because they're so racist and disruptive and whatever the idea of the day is. That just doesn't happen. In Canada, we're going to be run by, no matter who, if the major parties win, the Conservatives or the Liberals, we're going to be run by weak men and weak women who won't tell these men that they're being weak. It's a sad state of affairs, and if you want this sort of stuff to continue where nobody stands up against lockdowns, they continuously put nonsensical guns on a gun ban list because they can't differentiate it, they don't know how it works, they don't know the mechanics of guns, they're just going to keep the border open, they're going to keep immigration at 450,000 people per year for an unknown reason as well that they can't explain, carbon tax that they can't explain. If these are the type of people that you want in your government, then go ahead and vote for them. But they're weak people. As you can see, they're weak men. You wouldn't trust that guy to open a door for you without his arm breaking. Like, I don't know who are these people reading and paying attention to in these parties that they're like, yep, that's the person for me. That's the person I want telling me what to do and running my country. If you think on an international stage anything's going to get done, forget about it. It's just going to be the status quo. I don't see where the manliness or the womanliness and the confidence comes from either of these major parties. At this point, Jagmeet Singh looks tougher than Aaron O'Toole. He looks more reasonable than Aaron O'Toole. I think his policies are terrible, but he can answer questions. He's willing to stand there and take questions from a person he vastly disagrees with. He's willing to, the RCMP were the worst people in that video with Mocha, where he still responded to them. How are you getting outdone by Jagmeet Singh, the guy who's lost like 3 times in a row? Shout out to Jagmeet Singh.
I don't even think he takes a salary from the party because the party is so broke, but at least he'll answer questions from us. And the thing is, I think people can tell as this campaign has gone on, I've started to really viscerally be annoyed with Corey Hahn because I used to actually think he was a pretty good guy, a partisan guy, like a partisan party guy, whatever. But I actually thought he was kind of conservative, cared about the same things that most conservatives care about: fiscal policy, civil liberties, free speech. But as the campaign goes on, when we're testing some of the people around Aaron O'Toole, we're testing their commitment to those values I thought they had, they're failing. Because I'm willing to bet that CBC was allowed into that conservative event where they threw Alexa out of. So the nuisance litigants at the CBC who are suing the party, or maybe that's done with, it doesn't matter. The point is that they sued the party. They're fine to go in there, but not Alexa, who has behaved herself at other events. And I mean, it's video evidence. Who are you going to believe? Corey Hahn just saying you're disruptive, or the video evidence proving you're not? And yeah, like we're seeing people for who they really are during this campaign. And it's not good enough to just not be Justin Trudeau. Then you're only the devil I don't know instead of the devil I do. Don't you want to be something different? Don't you want to be a conservative? Like it's the name of the party. You might want to be that thing. I just
want to be part of a club, Sheila. He's got his hat, he's got his backpack, he's feeling cute, he's having a hot white boy summer out there, and he thinks that, you know, I'm in this spot, nobody can tell me what to do. I think Yakov Pollock for communications director of the CPC might be the best move they could make. He'd grow their social media, they'd be less cringy, and you know, he's able to answer questions. So Yankee Pollock for conservative communications director. Yankee, apply today. You have my vote. I think producer Justin wants more of our 700,000 chats that we have waiting for you.
Yeah, but I don't want you to just like farm Yankee out to the Conservative Party of Canada. They didn't earn him.
That's true.
We did.
That's fair. We did.
We did.
Him.
Although Yankee knows more about guns than all those.
Back in your room, Yankee.
Militant nerds in the Conservative Party. Okay, let's say bye to YouTube right now because we're going to get into the red zone.
Mm-hmm. Goodbye, YouTube.
Bye, YouTube. Thanks.
That's a Wayne's World reference, Sheila. I don't know if you get that.
Yep.
We're
I'm older than you,
worthy,
so yeah, I
YouTube.
definitely do.
All right. Chat us up.
Are they gone, Justin?